How's it going, everybody? It's GR_Duncan coming at you with a bit of a cold, but I've got a sweet video here for you. I've got a deck tech and a 4-1 league showcasing my new brew, Neo Delve. This is a really sweet deck and an awesome league, and I know you're going to love it. Enjoy. Welcome to the Neo Delve deck tech. So what is the game plan here? On turn 2, we want to put in a Delve creature, Gurmag Angler or Murktide. After we cast one of these creatures on turn 2, on turn 3, we want to cast Neoform. So sack our Delve creature to get a big boy. Our first choice is typically going to be Griselbrand. It just closes the game out and protects itself by drawing so many cards. If we're behind, or if we don't have enough life to pay, or sometimes we need to kill a key threat from the opponent, Archon of Cruelty can be another choice. This thing really just does everything. Usually this is a great way to close the game out too. Something to think about: if you draw 7 cards with Griselbrand, you're probably going to be able to put an Archon into play the turn after. Alright, so that's the game plan. Easy enough. But how are we getting this Delve creature into play on turn 2? Consider and Thought Scour are great ways to fill the graveyard up. A turn 1 Thought Scour Consider is probably going to get you close enough to delving a creature into play on turn 2. Mistress Bauble and Street Wraith, free ways to put cards in the graveyard. We also have Grief and Force of Negation. You're probably going to be forcing really aggressively, and you're always trying to grief on like turn 1 or turn 2 so that you can get your Delve creature into play. Notably, we have some dead cards in the deck, like extra copies of Neoform, or if we happen to draw a Griselbrand. These cards are great to pitch to these free spells. We've just got a couple Inquisitions and a couple Fatal Push. So these are kind of like necessary evils in the format. So let's take a look at the mana base here. For the mana base, we have 9 fetches. Fetches are kind of like soul lands. You know, they're adding a card to the graveyard to delve, and they create mana, which is really great. We normally want to keep our life total high because we need to pay 7 life to Griselbrand. So Gemstone Mine has actually been a very interesting inclusion in the deck. Not only does it make mana of any color, but it also sacrifices itself. So it's another card in the graveyard on a key turn. Pretty cool. After that, we have Darkslick Shores, then we have 2 islands, and then we have our Shocklands here. That's the mana base. We have our free spells to protect our combo and disrupt our opponents, and we've got all of our free ways to fill up the graveyard. And yeah, this is the deck. Let's take a look at the sideboard here. Leyline of Sanctity is great in this deck because it protects us from hand disruption while also doubling as graveyard hate protection. Due to the popularity of Nihil Spellbomb and Tormod's Crypt, Leyline does double duty, and it's just awesome. Mystical Dispute is great against blue decks. Brazen Borrower and Teferi Time Raveler are issues for us that Mystical Dispute can help solve, so we want 4 of those as well. We also have some Veil of Summer. This is like a Leyline Mystical Dispute hybrid. It's stopping hand disruption, it's stopping blue counter spells, blue bounce effects. It's just great, and it draws a card. Come on, it's Veil Summer here. We also have some more Fatal Push in the sideboard to help us against aggressive strategies. Again, we want to be paying 7 life. We want to get to our turn 3. So having a couple kill spells can go a long way. Same idea with Abrupt Decay, but it's also good against Teferi Time Raveler, right? I really hate that card, so I'm packing an Abrupt Decay. Lastly, we've got some Hurkyl's Recall. This is going to be good against Hammer, and it's going to be great against Affinity. These aggressive and sometimes go wide strategies can be really hard for our deck to tackle. So a couple of Hurkyl's Recall should be good. And I'm looking forward to testing that one out. So yeah, this is the deck. This is the sideboard. Thanks so much for listening to this deck tech, and I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Alright, we have game 1 here of round 1. This is our opening hand. We have Inquisition Acolyte for some interaction. We have Neoform to cheat out our large creature, and we have some Thought Scour and Consider to power out a turn 2 or 3 Delve threat. Land go. We draw Grief. Looks like we're leading with Inquisition here, saving the Grief for later. Alright, so Inquisition resolves. The opponent is playing Rhinos here. We've got 2 options. We've got Force or Shardless. So I'm going to take the Shardless here. It buys us time to find a Delve threat. Steam Vents. Alright, everything will work out later. We still have this Grief, right? So there's some things to be done. A pretty good setup here. All we need to do now is fill up this graveyard. We lead with Consider here. I'm looking for a black card to pitch to this Grief. Top card is Mishra's Bauble. We put it in our hand. They fetch Triumph on end step. Bauble draws us a land. Draw step. Grizzlebrand. That's actually a good draw here, because it lets us play this Grief for free, and then we can resolve the Gurmag Angler. Grief exiling the Grizzlebrand, and they cast a Violent Outburst in response. Important to note, I can't play Gurmag and Neoform this turn. I'm one card short of doing that, so I have to take the Dead Gone here. I probably could have tapped that land, right? Not sure why I decided to leave that up. Opponent has no attacks and they pass. We draw a Grizzlebrand, which is a pretty bad draw here. We can't Neoform because they'll counter it. Opponent plays land and passes. We draw Gurmag Angler. That's a pretty good draw. We hardcast Gurmag and we pass. Opponent swings in with the Rhinos. If I block any of the Rhinos, they'll die with the Fury ETB trigger. So I decide not to block. My plan is to cast 2 Neoforms on my turn. Not blocking plays around Force of Negation, so that's what I choose to do. And I just decide to go for it. So I cast a Neoform, forced. Well, here's another one. This resolves, getting us an Archon. We're pretty much set up to win this game. I just have to dodge a Brazen Borrower. We draw Fatal Push. Push the Rhino. Swing, cast the Murktide. They've got nothing. That's game 1. Let's go to game 2. Game 2 against Rhinos. We side out 2 Fatal Push and 2 Street Wraith for 4 Mystical Dispute. We decide to keep this hand, have some interaction, lots of ways to fill the graveyard, and half of our combo. We draw Bauble and see a land. We decide we want this land, so we will cycle Street Wraith. After getting Broody Pool, we pass. Bauble draws us the Gurmag. Perfect. Opponent plays Flooded Strain and passes. We cast Consider, and we choose to draw an Inquisition. We go for the Inquisition of Kozilek, and we see that our opponent has only Mystical Dispute and Prismari Command. So we take the Mystical Dispute, obviously. Should be an easy game. We draw another Archon, we cast the Gurmag, and we Neoform it. But our opponent redrew another Mystical Dispute. Thoughtseize Bug. Gotta hate it. So we concede. Alright, game 3 against Rhinos. No changes to sideboard, and this hand looks to be the nuts. We are 1 green source away from a turn 3 Grizzlebrand, so we're gonna keep. Opponent mulligans to 5 cards. We bobble ourselves and we see a Murktide. We will Thought Scour that away. Bobble draws. There's our green source. Land go from the opponent. So I lead with Inquisition here, and our opponent has got a Mystical Dispute, Double Brazen, and an Endurance here. I could see taking the Endurance or the Mystical Dispute. I think I took the Mystical Dispute. Let's see. I fetch here, and our opponent was supposed to shuffle our graveyard after this fetch, but they decided not to. Now that we have priority again, we just cast our Gurmag, and it's too late for that Endurance to do anything. Opponent doesn't draw land, so they just pass here. Swing with our Zombie Fish, and Thought Scour. I Thought Scoured because I was looking for a black card to Thoughtseize them again, just to make sure that my Neoform would resolve, but I missed, so we're just going for it. We're gonna get Grizzlebrand here. We have tons of life, and there's nothing on the board for us to kill with the Archon ETB. So we get Grizzlebrand, immediately paying that 7. And look at what we have here. We have a Grief and a Force of Negation, and we have a black card and a blue card to pitch. And yeah, that's pretty much the game. We Grief, and it shows double Brazen, double Endurance. I guess I decided to take the Endurance because I can Force of Negation the Brazen and I have this Mystical Dispute. Endurance is the one card I can't really interact with, and getting this Murktide in play would be nice, right? I'm going to Force of Negation the first Brazen, and then I'll have the Mystical Dispute up for the next one. Petty Theft, we force it, and they scoop. Alright, welcome to match 2. We are on the play, and this hand looks pretty good. It's a little heavy on land, but we have ways to fill the yard, and we have a Delve threat. So we're just a Neoform away from getting a big creature into play. So I would probably keep this. Our opponent mulligans to 6. Alright, we bobble ourselves, and we see a Grizzlebrand on top. That is not something we want to draw, so we're going to consider and get rid of that before we draw off Bobble. But look at that. We draw our second Grizzlebrand. Not a great start. Bobble shows us an Inquisition. Our opponent leads Amulet. Let's Inquisition here. Alright, opponent has a Titan and a Summoner's Pact. We'll take the Pact, but it's not looking good. Alright, well, we got the Neoform, so we shock, and we're going to cast this Gurmag. Important to note, I only have one basic in the current build of this deck, so I actually have all my fetchables in play. Our opponent gets their second Amulet, and they are going to be casting a Titan. I'm not sure why they didn't kill me with a double strike land. I'm guessing that they had it in hand, maybe? Either way, our turn comes around. We cast Neoform and get this Archon of Cruelty. Again, Archon is great at dealing with single problematic threats like Primeval Titan. Pass to you. Opponent gets a third Amulet in play. We bobble ourselves. We swing. Put him to 7. All we need to do is untap and get him. So we consider, we put the Wraith in the yard and draw a Fatal Push. Draw a second Fatal Push. So this game should just be about locked up. Unless they have a second Primeval Titan. And of course they have the second Primeval Titan. Are you kidding me? So our opponent plays correctly and they kill us. There, that's the game. Game 2 against Amulet Titan. We take out 2 Fatal Push for 2 Abrupt Decay. This hit is okay. Outside of the one Consider, it doesn't have a bunch of action, but we have the Neoform, which is important for the combo. And we have a little bit of interaction if we find a black card, so I could see keeping. Opponent is on a mulligan to 4 cards. We are going to put this land in the yard to try and spike a black card, and we do. So we cast our Grief and take their 1 expedition map. Opponent's hand is Bog, West, and Sanctuary. I am not happy about seeing the Bog, but it is what it is. Opponent Bojuka Bogs us. Pretty sad, but whatever. We will rebuild. It's a little bit of land go. Cycling the Street Wraith finds a Gurmag Angler. I don't want to play my Verdant. I don't want to crack my fetches because I'm afraid about Bojuka Bog again. But I crack here because I know I'm about to play this Gurmag. So I cast the Gurmag. And I'm just 1 mana away from Neoforming there. Opponent resolves Zusa. We get in for 5. We cast Neoform. I'm probably getting Grizzlebrand here, just because we're so far ahead. So we draw 7. I draw 7 again. I really wanted to draw the Grief. Opponent is drawing an Urza Saga, and I'm casting Grief. My opponent has just an Arboreal Grazer, and we win the game at 1 life. Awesome. Let's go to game 3 against Amulet. No changes to sideboard. This hand looks very similar to the last one. You know, we have a little bit of interaction. We've got our Force and our Grief, which is good. Thought Scour to get the Delve creature, and the 1 Neoform that we need to get Grizzlebrand. So I would say this is a strong keep. Amulet player is on a mulligan to 5. Garenbrig, go. We draw another Neoform. We can pitch it to Force. Watery Grave. Thought Scour ourselves. We find a Grief. Go for the Grief here. Opponent is very far away from doing much of anything. I'll take the Relic here. We find a Street Wraith. Cycle into a land. Opponent finds a Saga, and we find our Gurmag. So guess what time it is? Alright, turn 3 Gurmag gets us a turn 3 Grizzlebrand. You know what? You love it. And there we go. Force and Grief, all free, and the game is over. Turn 3 kill, baby. Let's go. Alright, we won another die roll here. This opening hand is not fantastic. This hand is probably a bit worse, but I feel like I need to keep it. Thought Scour is really good. We bottom a fetchable, and our opponent mulligans to 5. We start off by cycling Wraith into a Grief. We Thought Scour ourselves into a Force. Okay, kind of awkward. Our hand sucks, but let's see what happens. Opponent Mire pass. We say land go. Opponent land. Unmarked Grave. So I say, alright, well, I guess I need to hold up this Force now. We're going to Bobble Trick ourselves. We find a Murktide. Murktide is important, so we will try to draw that. Alright, we're drawing Murktide. Opponent taps 3 for Seasoned Pyro. I say, okay, well, I can't force that. They discard an extra Unmarked Grave and a land. So we draw another Force. So I decide, okay, well, now that we have another Force to pitch to our first Force, we can resolve this Murktide. So we have our little 5/5 in play, and we pass. Opponent plays another Seasoned Pyro, discarding 2 lands and playing a land, and they ephemerate their Seasoned Pyro. Let's take a turn here. So we get in for 5, and I could cast this Grief, but my opponent is going to be drawing 2 new cards anyway off this rebounded Ephemerate, so I think I'll play the Murktide Regent instead. The opponent gets in for 3. I decide to block. I want to keep my life total high for Grizzlebrand. Opponent decides to Collective Brutality Modes -2, and I reveal. I decide that that is not cool, so I force that. And we draw a Grizzlebrand. Not good. We hardcast the Grief here, and we take an Ephemerate. Notably, they tap their white source, all their white sources, which was pretty interesting. So we take their Ephemerate, and even though we're not comboing, we're kind of in the lead, right? So they desperately attack, and they concede because we have 8 power in the air to their 4 life. All right, that was an interesting game 1. Game 2 against Mardu Reanimator. I side out 2 Street Wraith and 2 Fatal Push for 4 Leyline of Sanctity. This is going to be good against cards like Nihil Spellbomb, in addition to stopping Hand Disruption. So let's see how this plays out. Our opener has a Leyline. We also have a Thought Scour to fill up our yard quickly, and this nice Inquisition to slow the opponent down further. We do have this Grizzlebrand, but we can always pitch it to Grief. Alright, let's see how this hand plays out. Opponent land goes. We decide to Bobble Trick. Bobble shows Consider. I think I'd like that card. So we will play Dark Slick. Inquisition shows Ephemerate, Archon, and Grief. So it looks like our opponent was going to Grief Ephemerate turn 1, but the Leyline shut it down. So our opponent's hand is really doing absolutely nothing. So this should be an easy win. Bobble draws the Consider. Land go. We play the Bobble. We Bobble Trick, showing Gurmag Angler. We want the Gurmag Angler, so we'll Consider and draw it. Bobble draws another Leyline, and all we need is a Neoform. I decide to play the Murktide. If I later on find more instants in my graveyard, I can grow the Murktide with this Gurmag Angler, which is a really cool interaction. Opponent hardcasts Grief. It does nothing. We play land, swing for 6, and then we play the Gurmag. Keep the pressure on. They fetch and pass. We Bobble ourselves. We see the Neoform, so we know the game is basically over. They chump, but then they Ephemerate to protect their creature, just to stay alive, but it doesn't matter. Wow, so we were able to win without even comboing? What can't this deck do? Alright, this is round 4. We are on the play again, and we have a pretty great hand here. We have the Grief that we can play for free because of Archon. We have a Bobble Trick available to us, and we have Neoform. All we need is a Delve creature, and we're good. And we're going to lead off with the Bobble Trick. Bobble shows land, so we are incentivized to fetch. And we cast Grief. So I think I'll be taking the Pure Steel Paladin and clenching my butt cheeks. All right, we drew our Grief off the Bobble. They play Sentinel and pass. We draw Force, and they play the Stoneforge. Binding Hammer. All right, we drew our Delve Threat. We draw our Delve Threat, but we're just 1 card away from playing it, unfortunately. If one of these was a fetch, maybe we would have been able to get that on the battlefield. Opponent plays Springleaf Drum, so we decide to Force. Force is not going to be able to stop this Urza Saga from getting Hammer, and we really want to put cards in our graveyard, so we're going to aggressively force the Springleaf Drum. Alright, we draw Consider. If this Consider finds us a land, we could be good here. Our Consider finds us a Consider. So we Consider again. Ooh, Fatal Push. So I made a misplay here. I was supposed to draw this Fatal Push. I think I binned it here because I think it was a punt, honestly. I remember looking at this like a punt. What I was supposed to do was draw the Fatal Push and then cast Grief and Gurmag Angler. I think that would have been correct. But I'm pretty sure I lose this game because of that punt. If I was able to Grief, maybe I could have grabbed the Pure Steel Paladin. So I made a misplay and I lost the game. My sideboard for game 2 is -2 Street Wraith and -2 Force for +2 Fatal Push, +2 Abrupt Decay. Alright, our opening hand is interesting. We have a couple too many Delve creatures and just 1 piece of interaction. Not a lot of ways to fill the yard. This could be a mulligan. This hand is not much better. So this hand has more of what we're looking for, right? Things to put in the yard, interaction, and Neoform. we play land and pass. So we consider, we mill a gemstone mine, and we draw a consider on their end step. Now we've drawn a Thought Scour. We fetch first because we don't want to mill our fetchables, and I Thought Scour us into another Thought Scour. Our opponent cast Void Mirror, which I'm very happy about. Gurmag Angler on top of our library. We were definitely putting that into our hand. And we are just one land away from comboing. Street Wraith, Street Wraith, land. Let's go. Turn 3 Archon. I suppose I went with Archon because I want to keep my opponent from getting any creatures in play. A creature in play is a creature that could hit me for 10, right? Now they have to play 2 creatures just to have 1 in play. I made a small mistake here. I should have swung first and then played Inquisition. But our opponent just has Plains and Shadow Spear in hand, so this game is basically over. Thought Scour ourselves into another Neoform, which doesn't do anything. Oh, we probably want a Fatal Push after they equip, I guess? Oh, okay. Well, game's over. Mono Void Mirror doesn't do anything against an Archon of Cruelty. Let's go to game 3. Oof, this opener is super funny. I mean, we have the Delve creature, the Neoform, ways to fill the yard, but no lands. If he had just 1 land, I would have snapped this off. This hand looks good. It's a little land heavy, but we've got interaction, ways to fill the yard, so we're going to keep. We find a Consider, so we cycle, and we cycle. And at this rate, our yard is pretty full, so let's Inquisition. Double Pure Steel, a Sanctifier. Easy, take the Sanctifier here. If they resolve that, it's going to be very hard for us to get our things in play. Pretty much always taking Graveyard Hate with Inquisition. Play Pure Steel and pass. We draw the Gurmag. We're going to Thought Scour, and we're going to Gurmag. Alright. All we need now is to draw the Neoform. And little late on this Tormod's Crypt. What I really like about this deck is the Graveyard Hate is really not good against us. Like, what are you, like, exiling my graveyard doesn't matter. I've already got my creature in play. Opponent buys Luris. We consider, and we find the Neoform. Let's go. Easy game. We swing for 5. I go Grizzlebrand here. And just like that, we've got, you know, double discard, force negation, and it's all looking good. Take their Luris. I decide not to bobble. Probably because I want to play around them cracking Tormod's Crypt. Alright, we draw Fatal Push, which is a really great draw. So we are going to just cast this this Murktide Regent, and we are going to bobble ourselves here. Considers on the top, so we are going to fetch that away. Grizzlebrand puts us to 4, and we find the Neoform. So what we're going to do is we're going to Neoform this Murktide. But what I should have done was just hold up double Fatal Push, right? I'm going to grief first. I'm going to... Oh, and I know they're drawing Saga. So I'm like, okay. I know their hand has nothing. I know the top of their deck has nothing. So I'm going to play an Archon. They make a token and sack that to Archon. So they keep their Pure Steel, right? Alright, clean up. We just discard the unplayables. Alright, they activate Inkmoth. They get the hammer. They equip the hammer, and they swing. The fact that, like, they were even able to, like, put that into play is crazy to me. If they drew a Shadow Spear, we would have been fine, I guess. I don't know. It might have just been safer to leave up the Fatal Push, but another easy win for the Neo Delve deck. Let's go. Alright, welcome to round 5. This hand is decent, right? We have a Delve creature, and we have 2 free spells and 2 lands that go to the yard. This could very easily shape up to be a turn 2 Murktide, so I'll probably keep. Alright, we see Gurmag on top. We don't need that. So we are going to shuffle it away. And then we're going to grief. Ugh, humans. Alright, I say, well, I'm playing a rogue deck. They're going to have no idea what to name with Meddling Mage, so I'm not taking that. I take Aether Vial, and I pass. We draw a second Murktide. Draw land and say go. And we just hit a bobble. So I bobble myself, find a Misty on top, and I go for Gurmag because I actually didn't have any instant or sorceries. We find a force off this Consider, which is pretty bad, considering our opponent's strategy. They get him for 3. And then they play this Meddling Mage on Murktide Regent, and it just all goes downhill from here. We draw another land. They play another creature. They get in for 2. Our life total gets lower and lower. Inquisition takes the Thalia's Lieutenant. Don't need them getting their board any bigger than it is. They play another Noble. Get in for 3 this time, putting us to 7. And I need a Neoform, but that's not it. I decide to scoop because their board is massive and our life total is low. Opponent wins game 1. Game 2 versus humans. I side out 3 Force of Negation and 2 Street Wraith for 2 Fatal Push, 2 Abrupt Decay, and 1 Mystical Dispute. Alright, opening hand, not looking too good. Alright, this hand looks much better. Bottom, the Mystical Dispute, we can go turn 1 Grief, fold up Fatal Push, or Consider. That's pretty good. And our opponent is on a mulligan to 5, so this should be an easy game. We take the Reflector Mage. They only have Mantis Rider and Noble Hierarch. How could we lose? We decide to pass, and of course they play the Hierarch, and now we have to think, do we Consider or Fatal Push? I decide to Consider, bin the Wraith, and draw the Mystical Dispute, which sucks, because I have a Cavern in play. Alright, we find a land, which is good. This is going to let us play our Gurmag. Alright, opponent has a Mantis Rider, and we have a Gurmag in play. Should be an easy win. Consider, bin the Gurmag, draw a land, get in for 5. They play the Rider, we fetch in response, they get in for 3, and we bobble ourselves, seeing a Grief on top, and they play a Hierarch, get in for 4. I'm actually losing this race, I can't believe it. Another bobble. They have an Unclaimed Territory on top, they get in for 4. We go to 2. Thoughtscour? Thoughtscour? Land. We die. What an anticlimactic game. Any Neoform would have totally won us the game. But that's Magic. Sometimes you don't hit it. I think it's good to showcase not only the successes, but also the fail rate of the deck. Alright, so that's the end of this video. Tell me what you think in the comments section below. Hit the like if you like, and hit the bell if you bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.